Welcome, FinTech Talkers, to another edition of the FinTech Talk Show. I'm your host, Patty. I have a panel of guests today on the show that I'll introduce soon. But let me start with introducing the topic of our conversation. Inclusive innovation, the imperative and the untapped opportunity of investing and supporting underrepresented and minority founders. Well, let's look at some numbers. The total venture capital funding received by African American founders in the US or Black American founders in the US was south of $500 million in seed and early stage, that is, out of a total of 150 billion in total VC funding. This is in 2023. That's about one third of 1%. The African American population, as you may know, in the US is about 13%. Just let that sink in. Latinos, on the other hand, start more businesses per capita than any other racial group in the United States. Yet they receive less than 2% of the venture capital funding. This is also a stark contrast to the opportunities these minority founders are uniquely positioned to solve. According to McKinsey, the Black American consumer is a $300 billion opportunity that is being tapped by Black founders. The total economic output of Latinos in the US is about 3.2 trillion. That's trillion with a T, almost 15% of the total GDP of the United States. Hispanic founders are well positioned to capitalize on this market segment. But then, why is there so much less funding to these founders? Is it a missed opportunity for investors? One of the first principles in startup investing in success in founders is the connection to the cause they are building, and that enhances their chances of success. But why is there such a dichotomy in the addressable opportunity and the funding to those that are well positioned to develop? The imperative and the untapped opportunity of investing, supporting underrepresented and minority founders. My panel today knows all about that because they're tapping into this or a minority founder themselves. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Good Patty. To be here. Hi, Patty.
Great. So I wanted to kind of name and let you all introduce yourself as well. Well, we have Linda Haddad from Bank of America Breakthrough Lab on a mission to accelerate minority founders. Laura Lucas, general partner at Latitude Ventures, a Latino-focused venture capital fund. Stephanie Joseph, Breakthrough Lab Cohort 3 participant and co-founder at Cura. And Maria Mardrano, Breakthrough Lab Cohort 3 participant, co-founder and CEO at Insperme. This is an all-ladies group. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started with you, Linda. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the Breakthrough Lab. How did it come about, and what is the mission at Breakthrough Lab, or BTL, as we all call it?
Great. Thanks, Patty. And, first of all, thank you for putting this panel together. I think it's such an important topic. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I currently work for Bank of America, and I've worked for them for 30 years. So basically, my entire career has been with Bank of America. And I've done a lot of different things, primarily in product management, developing products and services for our commercial or our corporate client base. And so as part of that job, I was developing new products and services that are very innovative. So in the digital product management world, like really being creative and innovative. I also sit on Bank of America's leadership team for the LGBTQ plus employee network. So inclusion is also a big part of, I guess, my passion. And in 2021, when the concept of creating an accelerator for underrepresented founders and startups came about, I applied for the job, and I was thankfully granted an opportunity to build this out from nothing. And it really mirrored my two passions, which are innovation and inclusion. And so I'm really excited that we were able to get this off the ground. How did it come about? Back in 2021, our leader, Brian Moynihan, our CEO, made a commitment in the industry to dedicate some funds specifically for financial inclusion. And it was a large number in the billions. And so our line of business, which at the time it's Global Payments Solutions. We sat around the table and say, okay, what can we do to contribute towards this goal that our CEO has set out for us? And a number of ideas came to the table, but one in particular came, and which was to set up an accelerator. Some of the things that we're really good at in this line of business are helping businesses grow. So we support business customers anywhere from small business all the way up to the multinational large corporate. So not only do we have a good understanding of how businesses grow and how we can help them, but we've got a huge workforce of subject matter experts around the world that we could tap to support startups in their journey to become, hopefully someday, a next multinational corporate. So that's kind of how it started in 2021. Myself and one other person sat down and said, let's start it from scratch. What do we do? How do we go about it? One thing, Patty, I'm going to give you a shout out. You've always been kind of a mentor for me here in the Bay Area running iValley Innovation Lab. So I've always tapped into your expertise, and I really tapped into it again and said, what advice or advisory can you provide to the lab to help us really grow this into something successful? And you can come back to me and I could tell you where we are today, but I'm really happy to have a couple of our startups who graduated from the program online to provide their feedback and how it's been impactful for them.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that, Linda, and inclusion and innovation. Lovely to hear that. And you're kind of combining those two passions. Laura, maybe get over to you. Tell us a little bit about Latitude Ventures and where are the biggest opportunity for Latino founders?
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be in this conversation. My name is Laura Moreno Lucas. I'm a partner with Latitude Ventures. There's 5 partners at Latitude Ventures. I'm one of the 5, and I'm one of the only Latinas on the partner team. So at Latitude Ventures, we're a $100 million venture fund. We invest in early stage entrepreneurs. The mission that we had was that we were going to start to create opportunities for early stage to help support companies and help them scale through our network and the access that we have. And so one of the things that we look at is the strength that each partner has and how we can bring value to the companies. And with that, we make sure that we open up our network and we catalyze them so they can grow quicker, faster, stronger than their competition. Because generally what happens with early stage startups is that they start to go to market, and the next thing you know, they need more capital. And so we're really trying to cut those cycle times and unlock the network so that we can grow them and give them the opportunity that they should have.
No, I think you bring up an interesting point, and maybe after the introduction, we'll come back to it, Laura, the importance of network, right? And is that a factor in kind of works as a disadvantage? And maybe you're solving that specifically for Latin founders, but is that somewhat of what positions minority founders? So I'd love to kind of come back to that after the introduction. Stephanie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience so far as a Black woman founder.
Thank you, Patty. It's an honor to be on the panel with these wonderful ladies and yourself, Patty. So I'm Stephanie Joseph. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Cura. And Cura is a platform that helps merchants in Central America and the Caribbean get paid faster. So we leverage powerful technology to help these merchants settle instantly and increase more transparency and visibility in cross-border payments. So prior to starting Cura, I was a Harvard MBA graduate. After that, I started Cura. And then before that, I spent 8 years working in financial services at organizations such as Amex and EY and American Express. And then a little bit about myself personally. I grew up as a first-generation Haitian American, grew up in the Caribbean, spent my time studying in the US, and then immediately started my career in financial services. Thanks again for this opportunity.
Sure. And Cura is Kura, right? And the website is cura.com. Yeah. Okay. So that
PureTech.com.
PureTech.com. Yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Stephanie. And great to have you. And I would love to get more of your perspective as well. Um, Over to Maria. Maria, you and your husband, Mauricio, and we'd have loved to have him here too, but you'd have to speak for him. And I know how spouses love that. You and Mauricio, our husband, spouse, are business partners now, have unique journeys as to how you got to where you are today. Tell us about it and what you're building at Inspire Me to pay it forward in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And Patty, and thank you again for the invitation. I'll have to tell you in my native language que estás bendito entre las mujeres, which means that you are blessed amongst wise women on this call. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And yes, Mauricio and I, both, first in our families to have graduated high school. Both of us first in our families to go to college, go to graduate school, and become experts in our domain of expertise. But just as much as we have very much similarities, we're actually very much complete opposites, meaning that I was the straight A student that was always, inspired and always motivated by my teachers. And Mauricio was not that student. And we like to say he was on the high school to prison pipeline, and he accidentally arrived at community college. And so we were just blessed to be able to find ourselves 26 years ago in a classroom setting and be able to motivate each and every one of us to be able to continue to go forward in school, because being the first in any kind of institution, especially an educational institution, can be pretty daunting and intimidating. And when you're not many folks and the people that you love most don't even understand what you're doing and why you're out there when you should be home helping to pay the bills, what makes it that much more difficult. And so we began our journey by helping others to understand that you had to continue to go through school. And that's the essence of Inspírame. It's not even just the educational piece. We are focused on inspiring people to understand what is needed to obtain the skills to help increase and fortify the workforce that is being depleted every single day. And when we think about the opportunities that exist inside of community colleges, that is where we're focused there, because they are pinnacle to our communities. That's where the essence of what they were built on, to be able to do certifications and skills and transfers and so much more. But the complicated piece is that our communities that they're sitting in don't even understand what's available there. And so we've taken our background in my 20 years of high technology, working at companies like Google and Cisco and Visa and Equinix, and being an expert in workforce diversity, because I've been a chief diversity officer working with the board and executives, holding them accountable on the reality of our workforces. Coupling that with Mauricio's experience of being on the ground, being a college counselor, and helping well over 50,000 students in his last 22 years to really digitize what we get to do today with the products that Inspírame builds. And that's what we're in the business of doing. Building this product that enables anyone, what I like to say 13 to 101, to be able to tap into their potential to become the first of whatever they want to become to improve their livelihood.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks. Lovely to have you and love what you're doing. And that's Inspireme's website is inspireme.com.
Inspírame.com, very much. Not .org, not .net, .com. Thank you.
Right, that's great. Thanks. You all have such kind of diverse kind of perspectives, experience, corporate now, obviously working with startups and in venture, and in Linda's case, kind of working with as an accelerator or in an accelerator. So I'm kind of wondering where we go first, right? Obviously, we want to talk about Breakthrough Lab. So do we want to talk a little bit about Breakthrough Lab more? Or do we want to talk a little bit more broadly going back to my introduction, right? There is a problem in terms of availability to venture capital, maybe the network point that Laura brought up for Black and Latino and other minority founders, and kind of build on why that is and go from there. What would you like to do as a group?
That sounds great.
I was
Okay.
gonna say in all, yeah, and I did love what you mentioned at the beginning on this whole untapped opportunity from an investor perspective, and what that really enables or doesn't enable us to do. So I think that the conversation can help us even.
So let's dig into it. So why do you think that is the problem in the first place? Yeah, I think you talked a little bit about how Mauricio's background's kind of different. He was on a different pipeline. So obviously when we look at opportunities or investors investors look at opportunity, they look at the background, so that can be held against you, but that might not be the only reason, right? And maybe some of your upbringing has something to do with how you do, but maybe it doesn't. Everyone deserves an opportunity, and they can do well if they're willing to work hard. But what are, maybe if we can kind of identify, what are some of the core reasons why we think minority founders don't get the visibility they deserve?
I can share from my perspective, obviously the untapped piece in the traditional model of, you have an idea and then you go to family and friends for that initial investment. But when you're first in your family and friends, in our case, don't even understand why you went to college to begin with, there's never going to have that understanding of them having the capital to actually be able to invest in there. And so that's where there's this undue pressure on ourselves as early, entrepreneurs to make sure that we actually have the capital in order to be able to invest in our ideas. And there's not many of us that have that. In our case, I was fortunate enough to spend 20 years in the tech industry that I actually had things like stock that, again, only one in my family ever to have such a thing, and other ways that I've had money to be able to say, yes, I have this money to invest here. And so you take that compounded with the opportunity that we know exists, the product and market fit that we have proved over and over and over, but then having to explain this to investors that don't necessarily have proximity to the reality of these opportunities that are here, because who we're choosing to invest in are in the untapped that have not been tapped into in society. So it just continues to compound the fact that there is this degree of separation that really brings to life this entrepreneurship divide that I call. And I can call it that because I've been in the tech sector and I know what the digital divide has done for our society, that I'm feeling the same thing, having spent 4 years in the startup mode, that there's this the entrepreneurial divide that is creating the same type of tension that is making us have to work harder or it take longer, or fill in the blanks, but it's constantly perpetuating what we know is true with many minority folks, right? In regards to education or work, and in this case, entrepreneurship, that you do have to work 10 times harder. And it just makes it that much more difficult. And so that's been our personal experience. And then not to mention that those that we do finally have as angel investors, for the most part, in our case, first-time investors, they don't even really understand what that means. Then we have to go educate them on that piece. So it's constantly having to educate on both ends of the spectrum that just requires more work, more effort, while still running the business and still looking to grow the business. So it just makes it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, no, a great point. Laura, your perspective on this?
Yeah, no, I think Maria brings up a really good point, that it starts with education. And like she mentioned, a lot of times, what we're seeing in some of the founders that are coming into the ecosystem, they're the first. They're the first in their family, whether they are here in the US or coming in from another country. They're the first that is seeing that, taking that entrepreneurial step in a way that they're looking to garner capital from outside investors. But I think that it's kind of stems from a bigger problem, and I applaud Bank of America for being one of the ones that is helping support the ecosystem in this capacity, where they're an LP of Latitude Ventures, and so they realize that the opportunity lies here. Excuse me. And so, traditionally, it has to do with 3 things, at least from my perspective and what I've seen in my experience. It's capital, significant capital flowing down to these ecosystems. It's to network, the network opportunity and how that network is unlocked. And 3, visibility. And I'll kind of go in that order. When we see capital, traditionally capital has not flowed into underrepresented founders, and that has stemmed from because people in the past has said there's no pipeline. But really what's happened is the VC ecosystem in the past, or the institutional capital that funds the VC ecosystem, has been very closed to extending or opening it out to emerging managers who would be able to understand some of the challenges that underrepresented founders have. Because it truly takes, like Maria said, the other side understanding. So otherwise, you're spending all this time educating, all this time trying to help them see the broader opportunity. So traditionally it's been this very cookie cutter approach of, Stanford, MIT, Harvard elite schools coming out, understanding what logos need to be on the deck, understanding how to communicate that, which is something that our community has never been exposed to, again, because of that closed door network. And so one is you have to open that door, allow that capital to flow into diverse managers that understand the other side, and then give those opportunities to those that they resonate with and they see that broader opportunity. So that's one. The two, the network, I mean, super critical. I've seen in, just my experience where some founders can show up with just a deck that, they have no pilots, no product market fit, but they get the capital because, again, they know how to communicate the market opportunity, what they've done, their background and logos. And if someone in our community shows up that way, it's not usually that well received, and they look for more, right? And what else? Because they're presenting to technically somebody on the other side who might know them or who might have introduced them through a referral or through someone that they know. Now, luckily, we are seeing more emerging managers that are diverse, and we are trying to network together to help support different founders and unlock those opportunities at the very senior level, because sometimes it takes very senior people to help support and cut the cycle times to do what we need to do for our community. So that's a network. And then the last one is visibility. I mean, I don't know how many times I turn on the financial media, and not only is it not representative of women, but I think we get blocked into different months. Like on CNBC, you have, Black History Month, and that's when you see most of the people within the Black History Month that are of, African descent or Black or other Black founders or other Black investors. And Hispanic Heritage Month, similar. You have, Latino investors, and that's when they bucket us. So we just need to be more visible. We need to have more stories told, whether it's on CNBC, whether it's on TechCrunch, whether it's in any capacity. And I think with those three things, we can make, I think, big strides.
Yeah, no, great. And I love that framework. And Stephanie, if I move to you, and not to put you on the spot, but if I use Laura's framework, right, of capital, network and visibility, and maybe capital at the top, you're a founder, you're a minority woman founder, immigrant as well. You have some unique strengths. You're solving to an environment, the Caribbean payments, and you have some connections. So how do you kind of pitch? How do you pitch your strength? Yeah, obviously you have some disadvantages that Laura articulated and Maria articulated, right, as a minority. But how do you kind of turn it around and pitch to managers, investors, your strengths?
Yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to double down on what Maria and Laura both mentioned. And I think one issue that we face as minority founders is the fact that the industry as well perpetrate the pattern matching, right, effect, right? So for example, like funders are looking for patterns that they recognize and that they're familiar with. So they fund maybe people that look like them, or they fund ideas that resonate well with them. So as a founder who comes in with a new idea for a community that they're not really close to, it's really hard for them to conceptualize having a VC backable business in this space, right? So I can start there now to show how do I turn that, turn around, right? How do I turn that around to pitch Cura or pitch my background? So I think as an immigrant or growing up in immigrant communities, you're kind of like forced to do all the right things, right? So you go to college, you strive for the best, you work for the top firms, and you go to business school. And sometimes you find that that's not even enough, right? And so the way that I think what has been effective so far to pitch myself is basically bring more data to the communities that we're building for. So I think you mentioned it yourself. the immigrant community, the Latino community, or some minority communities are building businesses at an accelerated pace, right? I've done that over the past couple of years. And naturally, those communities are naturally entrepreneurial. And so bringing that data helps. So for example, in the cross-border payment space, we understand that immigrants are also the backbone of the communities of the countries that they've left, right? Those cross-border payments and remittances represent sometimes up to 25% of these countries' GDP. So when you bring more light to the economic impact of that community and how this industry has not changed over time, and you're bringing an innovative solution, I think that's when I started getting a little bit more attention, right? So taking the size of the opportunity and telling the story and how we're shaping that industry and innovating in that space helps bring attention. And then also, as Maria mentioned, having years of experience working in the space also matters. And so I've worked in payments and banking and financial services before going to business school. And while at business school, these are the things that I focused on, not only in the US, but also in emerging markets and other places in Africa, such as Kenya and South Africa. So also bringing that story and telling them, these are the gaps that I saw when I was working at those institutions. There are no solution right now that is helping, at least from a banking perspective, helping immigrant communities like serve their families abroad. There's no integrated solution for that right now. Is there a way that we can create something, reduce the fees and streamline cross-border payments? Yes. So I think bringing that not only personal anecdote, the stories that I've lived, being in the immigrant community, but also how that I experienced that as a worker, right? As somebody who worked in financial services. And so I think bringing that together helps maybe alleviate the pain in the journey, because it's never always easy. And I think to go back to the story, like the pattern matching aspect, you know, it's not often that investors see a woman, a Black woman, trying to start or tackle such huge issues. So I think to now Laura's point, having the network, building the relationship, you know, also helps, right? So, and then to go back again to Maria's point, it's harder because those relationships have to be built. They're not going to be built overnight. There's a level of trust that needs to be established with investors, with partners, to say, this is how long I've been looking at this problem. This is what I've seen. And these are the, you know, the data, these are the traction, and these are the customers that I've like been able to onboard. And then you don't just go and ask for money. I think people need to really see what you've accomplished. And it's kind of like the show don't tell, right? And now to close it back again to the point of like the cycle time, the impact that this has on minority founders, and that it decelerate your time to market as well, because it takes you longer to build the proof points, the traction, the relationship, the trust. So for example, if somebody on the other side of the spectrum who has access to capital in a way that's very fast and can, you know, doesn't need to really spend the time building this relationship, they can get to market faster. So these are the challenges that we're facing. But this is also, we have strategies to kind of like address these challenges, but it hasn't been easy.
Yeah. Now, some great points, and I want to unpack some of them. Maybe go to Linda first and talk a little bit about her perspective too. But the point that you made around kind of remittances and kind of specific use cases or areas that you're better positioned, or immigrant founders or minority founders are better positioned. I can think of ed tech and healthcare and others. So I want to kind of get into that as well, if you have time. Linda, kind of looking at BTL, I know we've had 3 cohorts, and kind of using the framework that Laura put together, right? I think BTL is enabling or providing for a lot of that, right? Access to capital and even network. So talk a little bit about BTL's mission and how it has come in the couple of years, I think it's been in existence.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And first of all, let me say Maria and Stephanie, they're uniquely qualified to solve for the problems that they're solving for, right? So one of the things when we first sat down and said, we want to do this accelerator, we want to make it an impact accelerator and make a difference for the people that we're trying to bring into the financial, we'll call it financial inclusion, include them financially into the whole network. So I think what you guys are saying is true. You guys have experienced some issue or problem that maybe somebody like me, a white woman in 30 years in finance, has no awareness of, right? And so, and then we have investors who maybe are in a similar case, who some of the VCs are not used to investing in people like you. So how do we close that gap? And that's when we sat down, came up with Breakthrough Lab and talking about our mission is really to close that gap. And I really like the framework that Laura put together, because I think it really speaks well to our mission, which is to help close the gap for capital, right? Bank of America is investing in VCs such as Laura's VC, Latitude. We are creating a network. So when we have the accelerator, bring in these startups who are owned by minority or underrepresented founders, we're creating a network for them. We're introducing them to VCs. We're introducing them to subject matter experts. When Stephanie says she wants to do, cross-border payments, well, we have experts in that area, right? So we can get some of the networking and connections made for the startup. And then last thing is the visibility piece that Laura talked about. Breakthrough Lab, because it's Bank of America, no other way to say it, it is visible. And we can get you in front of many people or many investors or many subject matter experts that want to help as possible. So I think, putting those three pieces together, we are meeting our mission and objective, which is to increase financial inclusion and, kind of close that gap in investment dollars for underrepresented founders.
Linda, just I know you don't want to brag too much, but tell me a little bit about the progression, cohort 1 to 3. How many startups came through BTL, and how many did you help?
Yeah, of course. So, like I said, we had the idea early in 2021. We kicked off our first cohort end of 2021. We did it kind of, I'll call it stealth. It was a pilot mode. We took in 5 companies, all located in New York City, and put them through a 6-month program. So we do run a 6-month accelerator program. At the end of that program, we felt like it was very successful. So we went to cohort number 2. We expanded throughout, we opened it up to the entire US, and we piloted a couple companies in Mexico and in the UK. I think we had 17 companies go through in cohort number 2. By cohort number 3, we felt like we were well on our way, and we were ready to take on more of a global aspect. So by cohort number 3, which is where Maria and Stephanie participated, it's a global cohort, 26 companies in 10 different countries around the world. So we are in every region, including, we have Africa, we have Europe, we have South America, and we even have some companies out of Asia at this point. So I feel like we have it running in a replicable way. We have a good group of alumni now, so of which Maria and Stephanie will be part of our alumni group. We run a 6-month program. We have a pitch day, very similar to other accelerators. We have a graduation, and then we continue to connect with our alumni, which we say for another 24 months to make sure that they don't, end and then drop all connections. So we'll continue to accelerate and to help them any way we can over the next 24 months.
Wow, 5, 17, and then to 26. That's a testament to the value that's being provided, and in 10 countries. And you're bringing in people like Maria and Stephanie, and also folks like Laura into kind of almost a coalition, right, of similarly missioned folks. That's wonderful, Linda. Congratulations to you and Bank of America for continued success on this. Where can folks find more information about Breakthrough Lab? Like the
Yeah,
website, you
so
want to give it
yeah,
out?
we do have if you just search Bank of America Breakthrough Lab, it'll bring you to our website where you can see all of the criteria. Because we just did a graduation, we're ready to kick off for application for cohort number 5, number 4. And applications will be open in May, so in the next few weeks. So even for those of you who have graduated, if you have friends who are kind of in the space, and Laura, if you know of any startups, send them to our website and watch for applications to open in May. They'll close the applications after about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll kick off our next cohort in September.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I want to go back to what kind of Stephanie brought up around some of the areas that minority founders have unique strengths, right? So I want to talk about the areas. What are some of these areas, right? And I think comes to me ed tech and health tech and others besides the fintech remittances aspect that you brought up, Stephanie. So I want to touch on that. Maybe you guys can chime in based on what you're seeing. And then I want to kind of keep the conversation continuing since we have about 20 more minutes, as what we can do to increase awareness, right? And who are the constituents that we need to target, right? Obviously, there's a lot of strength, right? It reminds me of Sally Krawcheck, right? She formed the LOS. She was in Wall Street around the financial services chaos in 2008, and she was kind of one of the only women board members, and all the other men board members were kind of doing CYA type activity when things were going south. And she eventually got fired for actually what she did, but she said her motherly instinct kicked in after protecting kind of their investors or their customers. And she said when a house is burning, mom will kind of look at the family and protecting and stuff like that. So she used it as an advantage, right? What was perceived as a weakness was actually a strength, right? And that's kind of the underlying point that I want to make, right? So the minority founders have these unique strengths. They're uniquely positioned to solve and build certain areas. So let's talk about what are those areas and how can we increase kind of that awareness that they are uniquely positioned. So who wants to take that first?
Well, I'll just make a comment and then we can pass it over to the founders. I think before we even, think about the strengths of the founders, we just need more capital. There was an increase of capital that was deployed to many emerging managers over the last 4 years, and that was after the George Floyd event. So we need to make sure that those that have committed to deploying capital into this ecosystem, because that was an uptick. And prior to that was the stats that you hear of like less than 1%. So that was a little uptick, but now that capital is gone. It is now come under fire and now it's gone. So what we need is that continued commitment from those institutions that are going to continue to support that capital to flow down to those founders to have that opportunity. Otherwise, we're back in like prior to 2020 and those times where it's a big problem for any founder, regardless of background, to get capital. So it has to start there. And right now in this environment and this year, it is being a little bit weaponized. So we need to make sure that those who are committed to the cause that continue to support that. And at Latitude Ventures, we've been asked by some of our LPs, how do you feel about continuing to support Latino and Latina founders, given all the things that have happened in the industry with the Fearless Fund? And we are doubling down. We will continue to support and be very front-footed in our mission, regardless of what's going on in the broader macro climate. But we need the capital to do so.
Yeah, no, Laura, you make a good point, right? In 2021, it saw an uptick, but 2023, things have come south, right? They're less than 1%. That's what you brought up. But how? How do we do that? So Maria and Stephanie, I think Laura makes a good point, right? We need more capital towards these managers who are focused on minority founders. How do we accentuate that it is required?
Well, I can tell you that I'm tired of picking up calls from folks that, that are privileged and have these big funds that say, "Oh, it's really hard out there. And being a woman of color, it's just going to be probably not possible for you." And I'm like, "Thank you for telling me what I already feel. So what are you going to do about it?" And that's where I'm at. I'm like, "What are you going to do about it?" Because I know that given where I started to where I am now, I will figure it out, right? Because those skills, collaborative, scrappy, scalable, expertise, being able to ensure that you continue to make things move even when there's nothing to move forward, just to give people hope and give people the opportunity to know that they have time and energy to participate. Those are skills again that you can't teach. It's you have them inside of you. And so I have many that tell me, "You have the founder's fit. I know you're going to do it. You're gritty, you're resilient." I'm like, "Yes, thank you. Thank you." Like, I know that. It's no secret that my mom was only 16 when I was born. I was the first, and to be an executive at a tech company and to be a CEO of a startup, we're going to figure it out. But I also think, wow, imagine if they actually invested. How much further could we be for all of the kudos we're getting, for all the great things we're doing? And that's what I'll consider on a very shoestring budget, and then some, because I've had to make the personal decisions to sell my first home, to sell my stock, to do all that because I'm that committed, that I think, imagine what could be done if there was true investment to actually ensure that all of that was growing for not just the investor, but also for the communities that we're serving. Because my dream now is, yes, CEO and, as the co-founder of InSpeed, but I want to own my own fund. That's where I'm after next, because I want to be that person can really be able to hold others accountable for, we need more capital. Like Laura said, we need more capital, period. And the constant no's or the raising of the bar, because the minute you do what it's needed, the bar seems to kind of go up again and then up again and then up again. It's like, at what point do we stop? And that's what I love and appreciate about the Bank of America Breakthrough Lab, that for everything that's been discussed, I think one thing that is a real big value proposition that I feel that we have is Bank of America can help us hold others accountable. Like, there's no more, like, if I'm getting this response back, like, is this what this really means? And their experts are in there. Like, I can't tell you how many folks in the Bank of America family have looked at our decks, have looked at our fund, and they're like, "You're solid." I'm like, "Okay, great." Because when I go give this to this person, they're saying it's this and it's that. And I get to stand a little taller and learn through that way. And I think that's the biggest power around why we need to have these ecosystems to be able to support this work. Because without that, then you're constantly being told something, and then you start believing it and having the doubt, and it starts to impact what you can really do, when all you're really looking to do is just be an entrepreneur to contribute to their communities. Because, as Stephanie even said, when you're an immigrant or first gen or whatnot, so many are counting on you. And, for what you get to do, you get to inspire others to do even more so. And I think having that awareness and living this life in that mentality is a huge differentiator as even an entrepreneur for these investors, that we are going to do good, because we know by doing good, which, translates to making you a lot of money, then we then get to support the communities that we're looking to support. So it's a win-win proposition all the way around if the capital was available.
Yeah. Stephanie?
Yeah, Maria is seeing everything that we're thinking and that we're living. So thank you for highlighting that. And to follow up on the point you made about like something about being the first, it exposes you to all the challenges that you have to face very early on. So earlier you asked a question about what are the strengths that minority entrepreneurs bring, is that, I would call it being the first to do it in their family, because you have to figure out the workarounds around everything. So for example, in the cross-border payment space or remittances space, if you think about the immigrant's journey to this country and what they have to go through to even get a bank account, now to figure out, are they eligible for certain loans without, having to deal with predatory lending, or if they have to go to, walk like miles or go to another location to now figure out a money transfer business, because that's also separate from their banks. So having those experiences can help you better innovate, right? Because you have faced some of these issues. So across the value chain, you realize there could be a better way to streamline these processes for these communities. And from being a minority entrepreneur, particularly for the immigrant communities or for the Black and Latinx community, these numbers are not small. In the US alone, there's close to 50 million immigrants. And I can talk about the cross-border payment space because that's what I'm building on, but there's many ways to innovate. And the best way to do that, to acquire the skills to innovate in a particular space, is to really live it, to understand it, and to figure out where across its value chain that things need to be changed, can be streamlined, can become more efficient. And that's how you create innovation as well.
No, that's a great point. And Laura and Linda, maybe going back to you, in terms of the deal flow you see, right, coming into Breakthrough Lab, or deal flow you're looking at, where do you see some industries or sectors or areas that you see more startups and more successes? Is it fintech, e-commerce, health tech, ed tech, or where do you see?
Yeah, all of the above. So this is one of the reasons I love my job, right? Because we're taking these very intelligent founders who are so passionate about what they're building. What they're building is very creative or innovative, and we get to, help facilitate the connections that they need to do what we know that they're capable of, right? So these founders are so capable, as we can hear them today. So in terms of the technologies, so first of all, Bank of America Breakthrough Lab accelerates technology companies in the areas of, we say, fintech and financial inclusion. Funny enough, financial inclusion really entails or encompasses a lot of different things: health tech, ed tech, we have insurance tech, we have climate tech, sustainability. So we take startup companies that are early pre-seed, so previously unfunded from any venture capital, and accelerate them through our program. Where do I see? I mean, all of those technologies are super interesting and getting a lot of attention. Maria, I think you didn't really talk about this, but you started out as an ed tech company, but pivoted through our program as a future of work technology, knowing that workforce development, companies need people to hire. So it's not only a matter of getting them through their education, but getting them ready for the workforce. And I think that's one of the trends that I'm seeing, is ed tech really transitioning into, workforce tech.
I love you saying that, Linda, because it's super important. And that's one thing that we've been having a big conversation on, because if we can really provide that space for our learners to learn and to be, grown while in the educational setting, they're that much more ready for the workforce. And that's the expertise that I bring into Inspirame, because I've been a chief diversity officer at Google, Visa, and Cisco, and doing the work and the leadership team, and knowing that our corporate talent have shortages because they don't have what they feel they need to continue in their own career progression. So having those conversations in different places, that's the beauty of being a founder and bringing all the different expertise that you have, even if it's not in the traditional place that people would assume you would get it from certain schools and whatnot. But you can't take away those experiences and the ability to really bring together, entrepreneurial stuff, because it's what we're doing every single day.
Yeah. And Laura, you brought up like institutional capital providers and kind of raising awareness there, kind of making them more available. Is there kind of the super scalers, the big tech, kind of that community that needs a little bit more push as well? Like AI is a classic example, right? AI is getting a lot of oxygen. There's a lot going on, and they need to build capacity, the big techs and super scalers, and that might be a good opportunity, avenue for engagement. What do you think about that? Are they much looped into this, or there's more increasing awareness opportunities?
Yeah, no, in terms of the founders that we see and where there's opportunities, I mean, it's across the board. Our founders are creating in all spaces, including space, no pun intended. So, I mean, it's just incredible to see the growth and innovation, and we see it firsthand. And of course, it's in AI, and it's in these cutting edge industries. And so I continue to go back to just the capital portion. And how I want to illustrate that is when we go and meet with our LPs, they're always asking us, what are you seeing? How are you doing? What are you seeing? And how are your founders doing? And we always say, great, but we need more capital. Why? Because we have a limited capital pool and we can only deploy so much. And now, because of the macro environment, a lot of them are coming back to the table asking for more capital. So then we have to make a decision on who we're going to bet on. And we want to bet on all of them, but we can't because we're capital constrained. And it's just a snowball effect. So if you really want to support this ecosystem, it has to start with that. And then, I just look at the like I said, the opportunities that, Maria and Stephanie are creating, and it's incredible. And why shouldn't they get the capital opposed to somebody like an Adam Newman who has created multiple disasters, but Andreessen and others still continue to back them in the hundreds of millions? Not calling out those VC funds, but that's the type of thing that we see that just hurts, because Maria and Stephanie are incredible founders, and as everybody knows here at the Breakthrough Labs, they've been doing everything that they needed to do to access the capital. But why is the capital still going to these other opportunities that we've seen have been a disaster in Silicon Valley at the highest level of the capital markets? Is because of capital, network, and visibility.
Right. No, that's a conversation to be had. You're right, meaning kind of not success stories like WeWork. What are the
Well,
consequences?
we need to highlight, we need to highlight more of our success stories,
Correct.
because I think we share that across the board. And again, when I talk to our LPs, they want to know, who are those? So if all of the emerging managers that Bank of America has invested in and other big institutions have invested in start to show our community is successful, our community is scalable, we are building these billion-dollar businesses. Here's where they are now since you invested 4 years ago. That'll help accelerate the conversation, because you'll start having those talking points that you can point to. We just haven't done a good job of that, and we haven't shown that. And so I think that that's something that we can do better, and that will help reflect in some of the case studies that people can feel good about and share as part of the investment in diverse and underrepresented founders.
Yeah. And Laura, I know you have to go at the top of the hour, so maybe I'll let you kind of conclude first, and then I'll go to the rest of the group. I loud and clear, I hear kind of capital availability, kind of promoting some of these stories or success stories, talking more about that. But what are your parting thoughts as to how we do a better job here? What awareness do we need to increase? What stories we need to tell more? And how can people reach you and Latitude Ventures?
Yeah, it's very easy, Laura at latitudeventures.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn under Laura Moreno Lucas. I think we just need to have more ecosystems like this. This is an incredible ecosystem. Bank of America and you and founders, and we need to work together to make the change, because even though we are the largest, again, we're one. And we need more of us to really make that change and make that difference. So I think it's continuing to have these conversations, continuing to have the support and expand the awareness. And I think you guys are all doing an incredible job of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Along the same lines, I want to kind of poll all of you as well. And it is 2024, and we didn't talk too much about AI. I think it came up a couple of times, but we should maybe address it in our closing, because there is this kind of talk about AI can potentially build a two-person unicorn, right? It can do programming, it can do design, and so on, and if effectively used. And I see that as a major advantage for minority founders who sometimes have a little bit of a disadvantage accessing talent sometime. So AI could kind of fulfill that gap, if you will, right? So Maria, if I can go to you, you want to just give your closing thoughts and anything that AI potentially can address in some of the problems we're talking about?
Yeah, I think that from our perspective, I mean, even with Inspírame, we've embedded and added AI into our product, right? We feel a social responsibility to be able to teach those that we are serving the positive impact that AI can have to be able to bring information in a way that is honest and readily available. But we also know that we have to teach. And so I think that is one big piece for us as we think about our journey ahead from a startup perspective. And it's more of that for everything that I'm learning on this startup journey, I'm become a vessel being able to share that with the many followers that we have and the many folks that we're supporting with our products. And so I think it's very important from this entrepreneurship ecosystem that we get to learn as much as we can. And I like to tell folks, open doors, make introductions. It's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm not asking for you to give me an easier test. Just open the door, make an introduction. And if you can't do that, at least just move out of my way. Because it's been many times where they're standing in the way and it's like, I'm going to get through you eventually, but I don't want to have to exert all that energy. And so I think as we think about the entrepreneurship journey that we're all on, just thinking about that, how can we each support one another? What introductions can we make? What feedback can we give one another? What doors can we open? And what can we do to truly ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate, including in this whole AI construct, because AI is the buzzword. And I've been in tech long enough to know that AI has been talked about for a very long time, but now all of a sudden it's this new thing, and giving the people the opportunity to really understand what it is. I think the essence of it for us from Inspírame perspective, because at the end of the day, our mission is to help end generational poverty through educational attainment. So that's where we're all about exposure. And we do believe that AI is going to give us that opportunity to streamline that and make that happen, while also teaching people the positive impact that AI can have, and stripping out the fearful aspect that has been, fed to the communities.
That's great. A very, very noble mission. Stephanie, I know we're talking a bigger conversation here, but what's next for Cura, and what are your next milestones, and who are you planning to connect with, and who should reach out to you?
Absolutely. So I think in terms of what's next for us, even from a product perspective, now that we're talking about AI is also on our roadmap, right? So for example, in the cross-border payment space, because we are helping merchants get paid, AI plays a critical role, particularly AI and machine learning, to help fraud prevention at the point of sale. Leveraging AI and ML, we can, identify any fraudulent activities and stop that transaction before it even happens. And then further, leveraging AI and ML, all that data can help create alternative data scoring for these merchants so that they can unlock even better, more capital for institutional lenders. So on the roadmap, looking ahead, this is what's happening. And what's next for us as a team, I'm currently in Miami pitching for Techstars Demo Day with our partners, MoneyGram and Stellar. So this is happening tomorrow. That's why I'm wearing my Cura swag. I'm super excited to be here. My co-founder Clifford is actually in DC. We'll be in DC tomorrow pitching at the Institute of International Finance, for an impact competition as well. So we are on the move. We're going to be fundraising soon. So we're very excited to meet with partners who are excited about transforming cross-border payments, investors who want to invest early and high growth fintech like ours, and super excited as well to share more about the Breakthrough Lab Accelerator to other founders who may need it, because it played an instrumental role in accelerating our growth, and helping us, become some prepared founders to go out in the market, not only pitch our products or solutions, but also better have conversation with investors.
Awesome. So a high growth fintech, if people are looking to find, where can they reach you, Stephanie?
Oh, they can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm at Stephanie Joseph. Cura is also on LinkedIn. An email, stephanie.joseph@curatech.com. Tech is spelled with a K, not with a CH. Just to have that connotation of Creole language. And yeah, so super excited to be connected with everybody.
Great, Cura. So KURATEKH.com. There you go. Okay, thank you.
No
Stephanie.
H.
Oh, no H. Okay, TK. Linda, what's next for Breakthrough Lab? I know you talked a little bit about cohort 4. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I think what we need to focus on, and not just me as part of an accelerator, but I think this whole ecosystem, is measuring our successes. I think that's really going to be, to Laura's point, what opens the floodgates for more investment in startups such as Maria's and Stephanie's startup. So we need to focus on how do we measure that success. And as I said, at Breakthrough Lab, we are tracking our companies and continuing to help them, I think, over the next 24 months. So hopefully we'll get those numbers. Laura's tracking the numbers from an investment standpoint. You guys are tracking your successes. And then, that's going to tell the story overall. So basically that means Maria and Stephanie, you need to be first again. Yet again, you need to be first to have those successes so that we're creating the pathway for what comes after you. So yeah, so to reach us and myself, again, through LinkedIn, Linda Haddad, follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll be putting out a social media post on LinkedIn for when our application opens. And then, of course, search for Bank of America Breakthrough Lab, and you can look at our website and what the criteria are.
Yeah. No, the conversation goes on. Yeah. Well, we addressed a lot of things today, and there are still some issues as all of you indicated. And I think we need to tell more stories, talk more success stories. The collective awareness, it takes time for it to seek in into the collective consciousness. But this has been good. I know, Stephanie, you just sent me a correction to the spelling. So it's stephanie.joseph@curatech, which is KURATEK.com, and stephanie.joseph as spelled. And Maria, did you give out your contact or how people can reach you?
Yeah, thank you. So mine is maria.medrano@inspirame.com. And so you found us there. You can find us on LinkedIn. We are very much all over social media where you can find what is it that we really do. And that's under the Teco Guide handle. So it's at TECOGUIDE. And you can find us on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Or simply go on to the World Wide Web and put inspirame.com.
Great. So the conversation continues. I think this is really an untapped area where investors, superscalers, big tech, institutional investors, others need to pay attention. So we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks and months, and tell and amplify your stories. Thank you, ladies, for being on the FinTech Talk Show.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic. I appreciate all the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It was an amazing conversation.